Awesome, guys. Well, hopefully you guys had some good conversation about what defined your definition of love. If you could, go ahead and mute yourselves if you haven't already. Today, what I thought we should talk about, normally we've been studying out the book of Acts and going through the first century church and how we can go and be the church. Today, what I wanted to do, because the rest of the world is doing it, it'd be great to do more of a topical study on God's love. So, I know in our group, the one that we were a part of, it was so cool to see how our upbringings could affect how we view love in general. In the good sense, but also in the bad sense. And to see like that can play a role in how we approach God's love. Or how we can see God's love or have fear that, wow, is he really going to love me to that extent or more than what I've experienced in the past? And I think on Happy Valentine's Day, but even specifically on Valentine's Day, it's so apparent in our world that we crave to be loved. Yeah. That we desire love. Yeah. Projected for 2021 Valentine's Day, $21.8 billion will be spent trying to give love or to receive love. 8.1 billion will be just in material possessions. Jewelry, 4.1 billion, 2 billion in flowers, and 2 billion in candy. That is a lot of money to try and show people that you love them. And I'm not saying those things are bad, by the way. I love me an Easter egg. They're really good with chocolate and peanut butter. But in our world, we see that this is a time of the year, especially Valentine's Day, where we desire and crave love. 33% increase in dating sites between February 1st to February 14th. 33% increase in dating sites. There's over 2,000 different dating sites or dating apps. People are craving God's love. There's going to be over 9 million proposals. People are craving love and desire to be loved. We as humans, we crave it. We want to have attention. We want to feel wanted. And that's exactly what God gives us. God gives us his love. God gives us his compassion for us. And in our hearts, it's like we have a God-shaped hole. And only he can fill it. Wow. Only he can sustain you and fulfill you with his love. My point or my question this morning, are you content with God's love? Are you content with what he has already given you? Because Satan knows the desires of your heart. Satan knows where the discontent is and will pressure that point so that you start looking elsewhere for love or for affection. And this morning, that's what I want to ask us is, are we content with God's love? Go ahead and turn over to Luke 15. If you're wondering, hey, where's Acts? Well, it's later on in the Bible. And we'll continue studying out Acts, not next week because of the marriage retreat, but when we go back in person, which is February the 28th, we will be continuing to study out the book of Acts. So, in Luke 15, Luke wrote both Luke and Acts, so it really lines up well here. Luke 15, starting in verse 11, Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off to a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick! Bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. While he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, 'What is going on?' 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours.' But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Again, my point is, are you content in God's love? This story is very familiar. We see that the son, both of the sons, live under the father's roof. And the father loves them. The father cares for them. The father would give them anything they would desire. But we see this younger son who has become discontent with just having the father's love. So his rationale was, "Hey, Dad, give me my inheritance. Give me what you would give me when you die. Give me my share of the estate." And in Deuteronomy 21:17, we know that the firstborn, or his older brother, would be given a double portion. So if you take all of the father's possessions and estate, the older son would get about 2/3 of it, and then the younger would get about 1/3. So the younger brother gets all he has, all the money that he has now, and he sets off. He was not content with just having the father's love. He wanted his property, his money, so that he can use it for himself. It's sad to think that this younger son was more content with the creation or the possessions of his father than his father. By him asking for his inheritance early, he's basically saying, you know what, Dad? I don't care if you die. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'd prefer it. I'd rather your stuff more than you. I'd rather the gifts that I would get more than just being content with having you, Dad. That strikes a chord. We see that even when he does eventually come back, the compassion to know like his heart has changed in the father. The father love is no longer his top priority. In fact, even by asking for it, yeah, you could die. That's fine with me. And then he sets out to encounter a real life lesson. And I pray that we can tackle that life lesson today and even take away from it and bring it back to our own lives. But the life lesson is that anything outside of God's love will leave you empty and alone. Mm. Anything outside of God's love is going to leave you empty. And he has to experience it for himself. Yeah. He goes, he squanders all he has, and it's just his luck that now there's a famine. So he has no money, and his stomach is literally empty. He's craving to eat what the pigs are eating, but then he thinks back. He thinks back to what his family are eating, what his family servants are eating. And then he remembers what he gave up to pursue what he wanted. He gave up the contentment that he had in God, in his Father's love. In 1 John 2:16 it says, when you the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, are all from not God but Satan. And we see his pursuit of lust or an infatuation was not really actually love, but lust and of the world. And we see it left him empty. So his desire was to return home. And we know, we see that he is empty. He's broken. And that's what exactly the world does. Mm-hmm. It takes you as a pure, innocent person, and it breaks you to devastation. I think if you're visiting with us today, I'm so grateful for you coming. I want to ask you, are you in this process of the younger son who has gone out after wild living to pursue God's love, but ultimately it's more like the world's lust? Are you still on that path of wild living and haven't hit rock bottom yet? I want to promise you it will happen. Mm-hmm. Rock bottom is only a stone away. Yep. I want to encourage you, pursue God's love. That is the only thing that is going to fulfill what your desire is. Everything else will leave you empty. For me, I relate so well with this younger son. I graduated high school. I went to college, went to Old Dominion University. I wasn't religious. I wasn't spiritual. By no means was my intent to go and pursue God's love in college. And when I got there, I went after the world. I desired to be loved. I desired to feel loved. I had a void in me that I was trying to fill with everything that was of the world. I was drinking. I was partying. I was pursuing worldly relationships. I was literally trying to fill something in my life that ultimately would leave me empty. And it's so interesting because in my life, first semester, sophomore year, I got kicked in the teeth. The world chewed me up and spit me out. I was drinking, if not every night, every other night. I was partying on the weekends. And I thought that this was the life. But my grades started to slip. The reason I was there was to make money and get a good job. That started to slip away from me. The girl I was dating, I found out that she had been cheating on me. Like I thought I loved this girl. But it was lust at best. And I see my life starting to crumble. I saw my life starting to be empty. Yes, I was going through the motions, but I was alone and empty. It's so interesting. First day back on campus, second semester, sophomore year, these guys come up and start talking to me about God. And the only reason that I would have said yes was because how the world treated me the semester before. Sometimes you got to go through the suffering to really be able to appreciate what God is trying to give you. Mm-hmm. And we see that in the younger son as he comes back and is baffled. Like, don't even call me a son anymore. But his father, open arms, loved him. Gave him a robe to put on. Killed the fattened calf. It is time to celebrate. Because you were dead. And now you are alive. God's love is unmistakable. We see it clearly defined what love is, because God is love, that he is patient, he is kind. The whole 1 Corinthians 13, that is God, and his love should be enough. In the truest sense, it is unconditional. The Bible, even the Bible, is the perfect love story from God to you, showing his perfect example of what love should look like, laying your life down for one another, to the point where he laid his son down for you. I think in this story there is a second son. There is a son who never left his side, never left the father's side, but you can still see this growth of discontent. Mm-hmm. This growth of, yes, I know you're there, Father. I know that you have love, but I want more. Why didn't you kill the fattened calf for me? He allowed his desires and his passion to cause discontent. He became jealous of his younger brother. Jealous of the death that he was facing. Like, why are you going, Father, why are you giving my inheritance away? Right? Because he got his. He took his and squandered it. This is my inheritance that you're using up now on this person. You can see the discontent that he is feeling. And not just being content with God's love. You have been here since the beginning. Everything I have is yours. Why are you discontent? Well, it's because my desires wanted more. Church, allow this to be a warning for us. He never left his Father's side, but his heart grew discontent. Even though we know the love and experience his love on a daily basis, Satan is prowling around like a roaring lion, ready to devour, to implant seeds of doubt and discontent in your life. What is your life trying to distract you from? Meaning, what in your life is trying to pull you away from God's love? Is it a relationship? Is it someone who you think will be able to give you tangible love that you're not necessarily receiving from God? Is it your career? Are you so career driven that it doesn't matter where your job's going to take you? I'm going because I pursue my career more than I pursue my relationship with God. Is it the world? Sometimes you can sit back and look and be like, man, I'm looking at social media. They look like they're having a blast. They're laughing. They're having fun. And we can become jealous of the pods the pigs are eating. We can become jealous. And man, my perspective of the world looks more fun than the perspective of the kingdom. Is it suffering? Is suffering trying to pull you away from God's love? When you're in the world, God's love does not mean is a lack of suffering. God's love means that he's going to be there with you through the suffering and be able to give you a way out, but he's not going to deter the suffering, because suffering produces something. It produces faith. It produces perseverance. It produces character, that of which Jesus has. And we are trying to perfect our character to be just like Christ. Amen. Satan is clever. That is why we not only need to make our actions obedient to Christ, but also our hearts and our desires and our mind. His lies eventually will start sounding pretty good. Well, you know what? I know last year I said this girl, you know, she wasn't a Christian, but I'm starting to look into her life, and man, she says she has faith, right? She says she loves God. What happened from the year ago where it was clear that she definitely was not living like a Christian? Well, now I just want to be loved, and she's giving me all this attention, and vice versa for men, for women. Satan is clever, and he is going to put doubt or seeds of discontent in your life so he can pull you away from the Father's love. Remember, the world can only offer lust because God is love. It can't even actually offer you true love because the world can't offer you God. Right. We see God's heart in the Father in this parable. Whatever son it is, his heart is to love them with where they're at. We see the younger son coming back. We see his heart to give him everything that he has, because he was once dead, now he's alive. In the older son, we see his continual love and trying to love him. And we see even for us, through the cross, we see the perfect example of God's love. The perfect example of what he is willing to do to show you how much he cares and how much he loves you. God's love is there. His love in the decision to send Jesus to die for you on the cross is the ultimate act of love, to sacrifice his own son for you. As we're going to do breakout rooms, and in this time, I want us to discuss God's love, but also to take communion together. And I want us to focus on this passage. In Ephesians 3, it says, I pray, 3:17, sorry. I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. I want us to reflect on God's love, and that it can fill us so much. There's nothing else that matters. When we reflect on God's love, we can see how much he's willing to do for us. And our response to his love is to be obedient servants, to love him, and to pursue a relationship with him. We're going to have a song, and then we're going to open the breakout rooms so that we can talk and take communion together.